Hey there, Brian Roisendel here. I'm the host of the Fit Growth Machine podcast. And today we have a great episode as we are going to talk about the latest trends and tactics in the digital advertising space to grow e-commerce brands. Before introducing today's guest, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help e-commerce brands that want to scale their business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. BSR Digital knows that most e-commerce brands want to grow their sales, but they lack a solid plan and professional team to help them succeed. That's why BSR Digital offers strategic plans, implementation, optimization, and account audits to help more than 1,000 e-commerce brands like yours grow their businesses and surpass their competitors. To learn more, you can visit us at bsrdigital.com, and you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Okay, so today we have Hernan Vasquez. He's the founder and CEO at Hernan Vasquez Media and also the host of the Marketing Atlas podcast. Hey, Hernan, thanks for being on the show.
What's up, man? It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nice to be here and happy to have another Argentine in the call.
Yeah, 100%. There's not a lot of us out there, so I thought it was cool when we started talking about it a little bit, before we jump here. It was fun that we can get together because for some reason there's not a lot of people from Argentina out there. It's kind of weird, but
I get the same thing. Yeah, but it's great, and we're both from Buenos Aires, so that's awesome as well. So I like to start. I do this all the time because I'm really curious about how people got to where they are at right now. So what's your story?
So wow. So yeah, I'll try to be kind of short with that. I've been in this digital marketing thing for the past 11, 12 years now, close to 12 years. And I've done a little bit of everything. Back in the day, I started writing articles. That was like the first time somebody gave me money on the internet was on Fiverr.com. But back in the day, Fiverr.com, it wasn't the Fiverr.com that we know today. It was like, right now they're making advertising on NYC in New York City subway and all that type stuff. You can go and spend this amount of money on Fiverr. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. It was like scrappy guys like myself selling stuff for $5, which you will get $4 because Fiverr will take a dollar out top on what you will get. But anyways, I was writing articles back in the day. So I quit my job 12 years ago. I wanted to do this entrepreneurial thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went ahead and started researching a bunch of stuff. And then, I ended up in Fiverr.com and I started writing articles for $4 a pop in English. So that was kind of a ride. I did that to put money on the table, because I moved in with my girlfriend back in the day. She had a day job. I didn't. So, we had to generate. So that was the first time that I put out an ad, which was, the Fiverr, the gig. And then somebody hired me, a stranger hired me. That was the first time that somebody gave me money on the internet.
That's pretty cool. And actually, sorry to cut you off. One thing I want to say there is that you were like a visionary because it's not common like 11 years or 10 years ago to be on those platforms and getting those gigs. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And then especially, here, I mean, maybe you went through the same thing, but there's something that I was kind of a weird guy because I was like working out of my dad's garage back in the day. And then I moved in with my girlfriend. I was working out from home on the internet. Right. And here's there's a big culture on, hey, you need to, graduate, get a job, finish school, get a job, blah, 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 and whatnot. And if you could get a job in a bank or in a big company, that's even better. And spend like 20, 30 years there. So I was like the mandate. So I was kind of breaking with that. So anyways, that was kind of, I learned a lot because people then, they started hiring me outside of Fiverr. And since I was like hungry to learn more, they would started saying, okay, what else can you do? And then, hey, can you do SEO? Hey, can you do web design? Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And I would say, yes. And then figure stuff out later, right? It's like, for instance, one client asked me, hey, can you put together a WordPress website for me? I'm not a coder. I'm not a designer. I'm not, nothing like that. But I learned how to put together how to get a hosting and then a domain and then WordPress and then templates and whatnot. So I started my first quote unquote agency just by selling those services. And it initially was here in Argentina, and we did a little bit of everything, right? We did web design, social media, whatever, like whatever they need, we'll do it. And that was kind of my first dip into servicing other people, right? When it comes to digital marketing services. And then, but one of the things that really picked up back in the day was SEO, right? So I started researching a lot about SEO. I started doing a lot of experiments, and we would get really good results for clients. So clients started asking us for website design, and they wanted to rank their websites. So we started doing SEO. And then that was the first time that I started getting exposed to the foreign market, if you would, right? Like, because if you wanted to learn SEO, you needed to go out there, right? Like you couldn't just stay in Argentina, learning from Argentinians or whatever. It's like you needed to go out there to the forums and, in the States and in English and whatnot. So, and I came across these guys. They all had their own digital marketing agency, SEO agency for local clients for the most part. And then, I started kind of, talking to them and whatnot, and they started sharing with me the type of money that they were making by offering the same stuff that I was offering here in Argentina by offering there. So it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense, right? Like I can speak English, I can position myself outside in the US and whatnot. And then I started getting clients, abroad. And 6, 7 years ago, I never looked back. Like, honestly, since I started doing that, I do have a team here in Argentina working for me, and then a team in some other places in the world, but I never looked back. So that's how I transitioned outside of, the country kind of. And then, so I started doing SEO for clients outside, and then learning. And then with this group of people that we started, exchanging ideas, came out the first info product that I would launch. That was my first company, Semantic Mastery. There was 5 partners. Back in the day, I partnered with these guys from the internet, which was also kind of crazy, right? Because we didn't meet in person up until 3 years after we started making money. So 3 years after we started making money, we were making enough money for us to fly to Miami and then meet in person, So that was kind of crazy too. But then, we launched our first info product back then, and then fast forward to today, I keep doing the agency thing. I keep doing info products, and I keep on, trying to learn every day a little bit more. So that's the story.
No, that's a really good story. And for those who don't know, which is most of you guys listening, some of the aspects of being from South America, and more specifically from Argentina, is that, nowadays after COVID, we are all trying to be relentless and try to reinvent ourselves and do more things. But then here in Argentina, that has happened since I have memory, and my parents and grandparents and all stuff. So we all need to reinvent ourselves. And that, what you said, it's something that it sounds like everyday business today, but not 10 years ago, even for Argentina, trying to look jobs like abroad, having a remote team with partners you met on the internet. Now it's like, we have team members that we haven't even met for many years, but then back in the day, it wasn't a thing to have a remote team and remote culture, and even with your partners. So yeah, definitely you're a visionary, and that's amazing. So I want to ask you one thing or two about this, because I actually met you. Let me tell the audience briefly, because I enrolled I think last year or so in a course. It was a Frank Kern course, and I saw you in one of the videos, and I said, hey, this guy, the name is not from the US, but hey, I've been talking to many people with Hispanic names that weren't from Argentina. Of course, why would they be from Argentina? But then when you opened the Facebook Ads Manager, it was like the default location there, and it was Argentina. And I said, hey, this guy must be from Argentina. And it was like there. And recently I saw one of your ads because yeah, I know you're really present on the internet and doing a lot of things with your agency, and we are going to talk about more. We are going to talk more about that, sorry, in a minute. And it was like, yeah, I remember you. I mean, you work with these and these and these guys, and I remember that I loved Frank Kern's advices, and I when I checked you out, it's like, hey, oh my God, he's in a picture with Russell Branson, and he worked for the Ingratiosi, and so it's like I love those guys. So probably that the question I got is, how did you get to work with those? Let's say for me at least, champions.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, and totally see what you're saying, because these were my heroes too. Like I didn't have posters of a band, right, or a Hollywood actor in my wall. I was like reading Frank Kern's and Russell's and Tony Robbins and Nick Graziosi and Grant Cardone and all of these guys all the time, right? So a couple of things that happened back in the day was like I started being like really helpful in some specific communities, right? Like for instance, if you want to be in the circle of influence, let me tell you a story how I got to work with Frank Kern and how I was like his main CMO and marketing person and main media buyer for 3.5 years. It was like I joined his community. In fact, I with these guys that I was partnering with, Semantic Mastery, my company that we were selling info products. I was like, hey guys, Frank has, and I've been following Frank since, I don't know, for the last 10 years. And I was like, okay, we need to join his community. It was $400 a month. Yeah. And then they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it and whatnot. And then you'll consume the content, you'll distill the nuggets, and we will implement it, right? So I was like, okay, cool. But what I started doing is to be really helpful in his Facebook group, right? I started being really helpful in his community, really helpful in his community. And at that point, I wasn't doing SEO as much, but also running Facebook ads for this company that we needed to get, traffic from the internet to sell our info products. So I was like really helpful, helping people out with Facebook ad stuff and whatnot. So one of their team members, Tyler, he's still working for Frank. He reached out and say, hey, dude, you're super helpful in this group. Do you want to moderate the group? Or do you want to help moderate? Because it was a continuity program, was growing pretty quickly. And I was like, yeah, sure. And we'll waive your $400 a month. And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Right. So I started being, super helpful and whatnot. And at some point, Frank decided to launch his first agency. And then, and then they were looking for media buyers, right? Because he had his own like media buyer / marketing person. But the minute that they started getting 30, 40, 50 accounts for this agency, he was overwhelmed. So he started looking for media buyers, right? And the first time he looked, and the first place he looked was the Facebook group and his community, right? And then I popped out, and a couple of other guys, came up and say, hey, do you want to run ads for our clients? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not, right? So that's how I started running ads for Frank's clients, right? It's his agency. And then I was there for a while. I was running ads with these other two guys, and these two guys left to run his own thing, their own thing, their own agency and whatnot. And then his main marketing guy back in the day walked away, right? He walked away, so there was this void because now nobody was I was running the ads for pretty much all of the clients at the agency, but nobody was running the ads to get clients to the agency. So Frank reached out and said, hey, dude, like, do you want to run my ads as well? So I said, yes. And then, and then I started doing that. And then I need to go out there and hire other media buyers and train them to become, media buyers to run ads for the agency, because, Frank is so well known that he would send a couple of emails and he would get like 30 clients off the bat, so we had to build a structure. That's one of the difference. And this, when you're running an agency, you need to build a structure to fill up the demand. Like you cannot, infinitely grow the demand without the proper team, which kind of happened after that, right? After that fact, he partnered up with Grant Cardone. So I was kind of thrown in the middle of the whole thing. So we had to grow the team, because now Grant Cardone will, whip out his phone, and then he would put a story on Instagram, and he would say something like, hey, I want to, I'm launching this advertising agency. Who want ads runs by me and my team? and he would get 100 clients like that, right? So at that point, we needed to build the systems, hire a lot of people, and ended up hiring and training over 30 media buyers, running a team of 60 plus people, and then running all of the ads for the agency that was the Frank Kern advertising agency, right? And at that point, the demand far exceeded, and the sales far exceeded our operational capacity. So that kind of imploded and crumbled under its own weight, because we were getting a lot of clients, but we couldn't service them, right? Because we couldn't service them properly, I should say. So to answer your question, I think that one of the things that I'm always really bullish on is on being really helpful in the right circles and the right communities, right? Like being really helpful, especially if you own an agency, or if you own a some sort of service-based business, and even if you're a coach or a consultant. I'm really bullish on being super helpful in these communities, because people notice. Like people will notice. Like whenever I haven't done this in a while, because luckily the agency is growing well and it's growing on its own and whatnot. But whenever we needed a boost in income, I would just go to the ClickFunnels Facebook group, or I would go to the Frank Kern's Facebook group and whatnot, and become really, really helpful and start putting out content nuggets. And people will reach out to me and say, hey, dude, like I want you to run our ads. And I was like, okay, cool, right? So that's a strategy that almost always helps when it comes to agency content. Of course, it helps, but also being really helpful because people notice. That's how I ended up working with the Dean Graziosi team, and then we're getting our third 2 Comma Club award this year on Funnel Hacking Live. So it's like, it has always served me well to be helpful to others. So
That's awesome. So the 2 Comma Club, that's related to the info products, or what's related to?
So we got 2 Comma Club. Yeah. So we got two 2 Comma Club awards with the info products. Right. And then we got another one this year with the agency. So the agency, I just decided to focus all in on my advertising agency for the past almost a year. And I relaunched it, and we went from, I think we were like 6 people, and now there's close to 25 people working at the agency, and then we experienced this amount of growth, and we're getting the 2 Comma Club for the agency this year. So
I didn't know you could get 2 Comma Clubs for agencies. I thought it was for e-commerce, and so that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
Hey, it's a great story. I mean, it's true what you said. I mean, people want results without the effort and sacrifice and being, I mean, there are 2 things that I can see from what you said. First, being helpful and give before you ask for something. So give without expecting anything in return. And then when it comes, then that's great. And then being there after you've been so helpful, it put you in a place that when the void was created, being at the right place at the right time made the whole thing work. But it wasn't only that, it was all the effort you put before to be there for the community, to answer the questions, to post relevant content, and you still do it, right? I mean, am I wrong, or do you do lives, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, like we create a lot of content, a lot of free content. We tend to give away a lot of free content. These being one example. Jumping on great conversations with people, but also we do live streams. We have the podcast as well. And I go live on my Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group a couple of times per week. Most of my energy right now is focused on our coaching students, because we just launched a new coaching program. But I still do a lot of live content, and then repurpose that content and whatnot. But we do put out this amount of content.
That's awesome. So talking now about if you want Facebook ads, I know the landscape has changed a lot in the last year or 2 after iOS 13 for many brands, and they probably, things are not the same. Things have changed. I don't know if before it was easier, or it was or if it's easier now. The thing is that things are not the same. So I just wanted to ask. Sorry.
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah, they are different. So I wanted to ask you, what are the main challenges that you see brands in general are facing ever since that happened?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple challenges that Facebook ads specifically, which is kind of my wheelhouse, right? And we manage this amount of money every single month so that we get a lot of data, right, of what's working, what's not working, and whatnot. And what I see when it comes to challenges, there's a couple of challenges that, you know, even to the point that I see a lot of people saying, well, Facebook ads don't work anymore, or Facebook ads are going downhill and whatnot. If you go to Facebook groups, you tend to see that coming up quite a lot. And the reality is that every time I see that, I get happy, because that means that there's opportunity, right? And that's the way I see it. Like every change is an opportunity. Happened with the pandemic. You know, like over the past 6-7 years, we've had a lot of changes on Facebook ads and the economy in general, right? So every time something happens, we tend to be ahead of the curve. But the reality is that I would say there's like 3 main challenges right now when it comes to running Facebook ads effectively. Number one is the one that you mentioned, right? Tracking, the fact that iOS 14 kind of changed the rules of tracking and whatnot. And the main point, I mean, a lot of people forget that, and that it wasn't, I was running ads. I remember this because I was running ads for Antra Institute, Jeff Lerner's Antra Institute. And then it was one of our agency clients, and we were able to take them from, I think it was like $30K a month when they reach out to us, to $1.5 million a month on Facebook ads in 6 or 7 months. You know, they were scaling fast and hard, and they wanted to acquire as many customers as possible. So, and I remember that we were kind of at the peak of that spend when iOS changes. But what people don't usually remember is that first Facebook made a change before iOS was enforced, iOS 14, which is the attribution window for the Facebook pixel. So it went from 28 days, one day view, to 7 days, right? 7 day click, 1 day view. So, and most purchases, right, and you know, ecom included, but most purchases, they happen outside that 7 day window. So what we had in the Facebook dashboard, that was, you know, usually Facebook has been well known for over report, you know, results. It started under reporting like crazy. So that was the first issue, right? Like prices shoot up because Facebook will report 3 purchases when in reality you got 7, right? But most of them happen after that 7 day attribution window. So that's the number one. But also number two, what I think it was worse is that now the Facebook pixel is not getting as much data as it used to be, right? That's why that impacted the optimization on the Facebook pixel on most of the conversion campaigns, right? If you're running, you know, any type of performance campaign, you use mostly conversion ads. So it impacted the performance of these conversion ads, and also impacted the performance of lookalike audiences, especially pixel-based lookalike audiences, right? Add to carts, visits, purchases, all of that. So right now, at the time of recording this, interest-based audiences are working better than lookalike audiences, right? It goes back and forth, but that's one of the reasons why, is because the Facebook pixel doesn't get as much data. So that's the one thing that I see happening is tracking, and especially pixel data. How do you keep the pixel data consistent, which is the main thing. And then the second thing that's happening, or the challenge that I see, is there's a real increasing cost to advertise on Facebook. You know, CPCs are going up, CPMs are going up. During the pandemic, that was the only time that I saw CPMs plummet, right? So that's the second. And I listened to Dan Kennedy once. He was with Russell Brunson on stage, and he was like, well, you know, cost to acquire customers on social media are now becoming closer to real world cost to acquire customers, right? Coming from a guy that he's been doing direct mail, TV shows, you know, all of that stuff. So, and he was mentioning this specific fact that it was like, okay, now it's getting more expensive to acquire customers on social. So if you had thin margins, then now the cost to acquire customer is like eating up on your profit, right? So, and even going into a little bit in the red. So I think that ecom brands are especially being impacted by these two things.
Yeah, that's great insight, and I agree 100% with everything you said. And I think that I don't know what you think about this, but at least from our side, we've seen that. Of course, I don't know if it was Ryan Dice or anyone else at digital marketer that said that now we need to go back to the basics and we need to level up the marketing and look outside. I mean, we've been in the comfort zone for a long time now. We need to probably take a look at things we have never taken a look at. For example, the offer. You said
Mhm.
it, the margins now are slimmer. So why don't we take a look at the pricing, at the funnel? Hey, why don't we offer upsells, cross sells, or whatever to increase the AOV, the lifetime value? Is like uh, a lot of brands also care about the, I don't know if they sell something online, of course, they care about the initial ROAS or the revenue they get or the profitability they get from the first purchase. But then
Mhm.
they forget that they are not one-time customers, with some exceptions, of course. Most times they are repeated customers, but they don't care. They don't measure the cost per acquisition versus lifetime value. And there's a mix of things that they are not looking at. The funnel. What's the conversion rate for the funnel? And many other things that they didn't even care before, because it was as easy between quotes as creating a Facebook ad campaign and boom, you got sales. Now things are more expensive. There are many other levers you can pull to actually make it still work for the company in a different way, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I totally agree. In fact, that happened. Like I went through that several times as you start to scale campaigns, right? Because the cost to acquire customers, they're bound to go up when you start spending more money on the platform, right? So one of the things, for instance, this client, that told you about, that went from 30K to 1.5 million. When we started, it was like, I think we were spending probably $60 to $70 to acquire a customer. By the time we were at 1.5, we were at 250 to $300 to acquire a customer, right? Because your costs are bound to go up. You're pushing more volume. You're showing your ads to color audiences, right? Broader and broader audiences. So we needed to take a deep look at squeezing as much juice as possible of all of the levers, right? So if we would change a button color, right? If we would change the button call to action, how would that impact our average order value, right? But not only on the funnel, on the email sequences as well, right? If we would have an abandoned cart sequence, what if we change this headline and we split test that, and then we get an extra 2% open rate? That's a big deal when you're getting 15,000 leads per day. That's a big deal. So I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of, okay, we've gotten fat, we've gotten lazy, we've gotten happy. Now it's the time to, especially, with this said recession that's coming in, whatever, now it's the time to roll up your sleeves, get to work, try to optimize your offer, try to optimize your funnel, try to give more value, because that's where the success of a campaign is going to lie.
Yeah, and let's give the audience what at least I promised in the beginning of the episode, which is really interesting as well, which is what they can do about it. So
Yeah.
we can go step by step or item by item. If you want to say, hey, tracking. They
Mhm.
used to look at the Facebook Ads Manager and let's say it was okay or fairly okay. What
Mhm.
about now? Should they only settle by looking at the Facebook Ads Manager information, or should they use some other tools? What can they do?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And I think that one of the things that, for anyone spending money on advertising at this point, on Facebook, they need to have their tracking on point, right? And by tracking, I mean, we almost always recommend a couple of third-party tracking tools, right? Like I'm not affiliated to any of this, but one of them is anytrack.io, which is the one that I use at my agency. Every time my clients come, we'll install anytrack.io and then just run it by them, and then we're good. There's another one called Hyros, Alex Becker Hyros, that's pretty well known. Then there's a couple of others called, one of them is Capibox, it integrates with ClickFunnels, RedTrack, and a bunch of others. The main point is that it doesn't matter which one you choose, that you use one, for two main reasons. Number one is because, and I think the number one most important thing is because it feeds data back into your pixel when the 7-day attribution window is over, which again, most people will not buy right away. They'll need touch points, they'll need nurturing, they'll need to trust you and like you and know who you are, right? So any type of third-party tracking, it's a must right now. It's a must on Facebook. You can do this with Zapier if you want to, and the API, you know, or you can code your own stuff. It doesn't matter. So that you can keep those campaigns healthy and performing for a long time, because the Facebook pixel keeps on coming, right? It keeps, the data keeps on coming, right? And making the pixel smarter, especially if you're running performance campaigns. So that's the number one benefit that it has. But the other benefit is that it allows you to make decisions based not on what Facebook says, but based on what the tool would say. So in our case, what we do is when we're reporting back to clients, we grab Facebook data, we grab any track data, and usually we make decisions based on any track data, but you know, we present both information. So for instance, again, Facebook tends to underreport now. So if it's saying, okay, we got 10 sales at $30 per sale, but any track is saying, well, you actually got 17 sales at $18 per sale, we usually pay attention to what any track is saying, because it has, you know, further insight in the funnel. So I enjoy that. I like that. And we've made decisions mostly based on what that dashboard is saying versus the Facebook dashboard. You can still use the Facebook dashboard, but if you have like a really short, you know, transaction window, so if you're selling gadgets and people are buying right away, but it's not the case for most people. So that's why I definitely suggest you should have some sort of third-party tracking tool.
Yeah, 100%. And I met a lot of e-commerce store owners mainly that use Google Analytics. I mean, the default configuration of Google Analytics to read the stats and the indicators and the metrics and all stuff. And if you, I mean, again, nothing against Google Analytics, well configured could be great, but as any other tool, if it's not well configured and by default, it will show you the data that it will show you, right? Google ads or direct or organic over the Facebook ads. So it's important to be, if you listen and hire an agency, that you are on the same page about how to track and read metrics, especially even if they are running your whole marketing, but more, especially if they are not, and if you want to measure efforts across platforms, then probably it's recommended that you agree on how to measure things, because otherwise it could be messy. And again, it's not your fault as the owner, it's not our fault. We are all in this together, and we unfortunately don't have one source of truth as we used to have, right? So that's great about the tracking. And what about I'm always curious about the following. I mean, to getting your thoughts on, I mean, you can run, let's say you're starting out, there are a lot of interests for your target audience, and you start there. You might even leverage lookalike audience and remarketing and blah, blah, blah. That's awesome. But then you reach a point in which you reach plateau and you kind of get past that point and kind of grow, you're still in the business. So what are some of probably other options that these brands could leverage besides what they can target within the platform itself?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point, because also Facebook, usually what they do is they include interest and then they take it out, and then from time to time they purge some interest and they add some others and whatnot, and maybe some interests that were working for you a couple of months ago, they're not available to target within the platform anymore. So, and this goes hand in hand with what we're noticing when it comes to the second challenge, which is increased to acquire customers, right? So we test everything. Like on Facebook, we test native audiences, we test lookalike audiences. I always say that there's like 3 phases of a campaign. It's like you start with interest, then you go to lookalike audiences, and then you go to, once you get enough pixel data, you go to no targeting campaign. So if you have, I don't know, 1,000 buyers, you can run ads to male, US, 25 plus, provided that's your audience. And that's it, right? Facebook will get you buyers, right? Provided that tracking is properly set up. But anyways, another tool that we use a lot, that we use for our own business, for our own coaching business, for our own agency, and for clients, is the usage of third-party audiences. So third-party audiences are audiences that pretty much anyone can access to. And I recommend you research a little bit about this. There's a couple of providers Oracle Audiences, LiveRamp, and whatnot. So there's a couple of others, but these audiences are audiences that come from credit reporting agencies like Equifax, TransUnion, Experian, and whatnot, as well as MasterCard and Visa, right? And what allows us to do, and this is something that, especially if you're targeting, if you have an e-com brand that's targeting specific niche or sector, you know that the best people to target for your product and your brand are people that have been consuming similar products over the past, let's say, 6 to 12 months, right? Like that's the number one rule of marketing. Direct response is that you sell them more stuff people aren't consuming, right? That product. So third-party audiences allow you to do that. So they allow you to target people that have been consuming, let's say, baby products over the past 6 to 12 months, not because they say they like baby products or they like Carter's or Pampers or whatever, but they've actually consumed based on their credit card information, right? So they've consumed, they put their money where their mouth is. So I think that's really, really powerful. We use it a lot on Facebook to do what I call LinkedIn targeting within Facebook, right? Like a lot of people are saying, well, Facebook ads don't work for B2B. And that's where third-party audiences are really good, because we can target chiropractors, doctors, lawyers, not because they say they like something, but because they actually have a license, right? And that's coming from these third-party audiences, which are pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's a great insight, because we generally, when we listen to, let's say, influencers in the space or those so-called gurus, and it's like, hey, they give you like the latest tactics and tricks, and sometimes there are no such things, and it's like everything is the same. And when you hear like the advice from experienced people such as you, it's refreshing, because you get actual and actionable things to implement, that if you're an e-commerce brand or any brand that wants to keep growing, and you feel that you probably, I don't know if you reached a plateau with Facebook, but you don't have new ideas, or as you said, you're a B2B, and you can get new audiences from this. Because sometimes, and this is something that I always tell my clients, and I like to get your thoughts on this, is that even if Facebook ads is the right platform for you, let's say Facebook/Instagram, many people, depending on who your audience is, are not hanging out on those platforms. They are on some others, or they don't have time. You mentioned chiropractors or dentists. Those people live offline sometimes, or so sometimes it's hard to target them with an ad, or sometimes it's hard to target them for whatever reason. So it's good to also, besides this, to get to find people in some other, as I call them, bubbles. I don't know. Sometimes people live in TikTok, or sometimes people live in Pinterest, or sometimes in Twitter. I don't know if you have had success with getting conversions directly from those, but sometimes it's like, hey, you're getting eyeballs from people that you weren't getting before, and maybe you can retarget them through, I don't know, Google search or whatever, if they are not using paid ads. But still, it's a digital marketing tactic that could work nowadays, because again, things have changed, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I also believe in that omnipresence, approach to marketing, whether it is, hey, they're coming through Google Ads, and that they're really interested in what you have to offer, because they're actually searching for something, they're searching for an option. But again, even at that point where it's like, okay, they're really close to making a decision over the next week or two, they're not there yet, right? So how do you make them, how do you make them, go that through the finish line? And one of the things that you can do is to run omnipresent campaign. We use a tool called AdRoll. There's another one called Perfect Audience. There's a couple of others. So they will run on top of, they can run on top of Facebook ads or Google Display Network if you want to, but there's some other sites that they will run, they will place banners. So I think it's really good. These campaigns, I always like to have running an ad roll campaign at a low budget, especially for clients, like if they hit one of their websites or one of their landing pages, so that they're on top of mind. And then Google Display Network, I think it's another really good contender for retargeting ads. And even again, if you're getting people from YouTube organic, or if you're getting a lot of people from SEO organic, you can run a low budget campaign on Facebook. The idea is that they'll see you everywhere, because like, again, people need several touch points before they make a purchase, whether it's a big purchase or small purchase. Human beings, that's how they behave. So totally tracking
That's
with you.
great. That's great. So to these all been great, and to wrap up, I have like a few final questions. I always like to ask the guests to share some of the books that they loved. It could be business related, or it could not.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this. So there's two books that I think are really good. Well, actually three. So the first one is Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. I mean, it's the basics, but I always go back to that book every couple of months, because it's like a lot of direct response performance marketing. That's what we do. That's why, I have Ogilvy that back there, and then the Rolls Royce car letter and all of that, because I'm a big geek of copywriting direct response. So Breakthrough Advertising, that's number one. Number two, I think that every marketer or business owner should read is Influence by Robert Cialdini. That's a great book, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so bullish about putting out content, because of the principle of reciprocity, principle of authority, and whatnot. So Influence by Robert Cialdini, it's really, really good. And then the third one that I read and I come back a lot to is Atomic Habits. I think it's by James Clear, if I'm not mistaken. I might be butchering that, but it's Atomic Habits. It's really, really good as well. I go back to that book several times. That's more like how to create good habits, how to get rid of bad habits. So yeah, those are the ones that I would recommend.
That's awesome. And what about mentors? Have you had any or
Oh
advice?
yeah. Yeah, I think that investing in mentorship is a big deal. I think that, it allows you to compress time between where you're at and where you want to be. Like Frank Kern, right now it's a good friend, and he's been a mentor for forever, since before I knew him. So if you haven't been consuming his content, I strongly recommend you do, because he's great, and he's as humble as you see him on his videos and whatnot. He's like that in real life, so it's great. I really like Russell as well, Russell Brunson. I think that the stuff that he's putting out, it's great. And I'm a big fan of the classics. Like if you can get stuff by again, David Ogilvy, if you can get stuff by Robert Collier, if you can get stuff by Gary Vaynerchuk, if you can get stuff by by the classics, I think that one of the things that I always say is that techniques change, the market change, technology changes, platforms change, but people don't. We take a long time to change, and the thing that makes us buy right now are the same things that made us buy 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. So if you study the basics, you'll never go wrong. So
Yeah, and I love it because the other day I read something that I still remember, and it's that it's different to teach a tactic than to teach a principle, because a tactic might work. I don't know, Facebook ads might work now or not. The next big thing could be Facebook, or sorry, Google, or it could be a new platform we don't know right now. But then the principle of advertising, as you said, the classics, they teach something that probably Facebook didn't even exist when that was written, right? So
yeah.
it's something that applies regardless of the new thing that comes out. So yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, thank you again for being on the show. I really enjoy the conversation, because we typically enjoy great conversations with founders of e-commerce brands, or I don't know, business coaches, book authors, and they give a lot of insights on many things. But I always enjoy having a little bit of more, let's say, nerdy conversation between peers and colleagues around, I don't know, the latest things that are going on in the advertising world, because in the end, those listening also need to advertise to get traffic and sales to their websites. So why not talking about this? So yeah, I really had a lot of fun. And please tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and your company, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking about these things, these challenges, I just recorded a presentation. It's free, and it's at scaledriven.com, scaledriven.com/100M. So 100M. So that's something that, I'll give you the link. It's completely free. They can watch it and whatnot. And then, social media, if you search for my name, I have a YouTube channel with 4 or 5 years worth of content now, or maybe 6 years worth of content now. So it's there, and then have free Facebook group. So yeah, I'll give you the links, and then people can find me. So
yeah, that's awesome. There are always, so there will be a full page for this episode as always, and you'll find the links in the show notes as well. So I really enjoyed the conversation again. Thank you, Hernan, for being on the show.
of course, man. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.